Hey everybody, good afternoon. It is Tuesday, Facebook Live Day, and today I'm going to be coming back on here talking about For the Love. Um, we're wrapping up Love Month this month, and part two is going to be about compassion today. For those of you who have not been on here before or watched a video, I'm Bonnie Barclay. I'm a therapist and owner of Creekside Counseling and Wellness in Knoxville, Tennessee. So, hello and welcome. Feel free to comment below if you are watching live or on the replay. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below and I'll be happy to try and get to those and answer them. So, For the Love, part two, focusing on self compassion. In addition to the Facebook Live that we're doing right now, I'm going to be posting about self compassion all through the week this week, including an article later this week by Kristen Neff on what self compassion is not. And so I think that's going to be a really important article to further unpack this after the live today because we'll just be touching on things today. So I want to really highlight how we can be our own inner enemy rather than our inner ally, and then move into defining and exploring the three elements of self compassion. And then today I'm going to end with the hard truth, like I normally do with my Facebook Lives, and then some takeaways. And those takeaways today are going to be some specific tips for practice and some sound resources for you to explore if you're interested in pursuing this type of practice further. And also, in one of the posts this week, I am going to reference some free guided meditations from both Neff and Christopher Germer. Those are kind of the two big gurus on how to, those are free to you for you to continue that practice for yourself. So I want to start off kind of with a scenario today. So strap in, here we go. I want you to imagine, I just kind of write, a friend calling. She divorced 3 years ago and just started dating again. She met someone she likes and recently shared her excitement with you. Now she's calling to say he just ended things suddenly. She says to you that she's devastated, feels terrible, and wonders if she will ever find someone or be happy again. So I want you to just take a moment and imagine how you think you would respond to your friend in this moment of witnessing her suffering. What if you found out she made mistakes? Even really blew it by putting too much pressure on this man she was dating and is now feeling completely inadequate? Would that change the way you responded to her? Would you say, quote, to be perfectly honest, you blew it. And since you are so lonely and needy, you might just drive every man away. Not to mention, you are at least 20 pounds overweight and already have a failed marriage. I mean, frankly, you don't deserve to find someone or to be happy again. You had your chance and you blew it. Wow, right? Would you ever talk to someone you cared about this way? Yet our inner dialogue is usually more enemy or critic than ally. Western culture places an emphasis on being kind to friends, family, others who are struggling, not so much when it comes to ourselves. So, what is self compassion? The simple definition is treating yourself the way you would treat a friend who is having a hard time, even if your friend blew it or is feeling inadequate or is facing a tough life challenge. It's a practice where we learn to be a good friend to ourselves when we need it the most, to become our inner ally, to learn to speak to ourselves the way we would a friend. Hopefully, not in the way above, right? So let's look again at the scenario we started with. What might you say to that friend? I'm so sorry. I know you really liked him. Are you okay? You must be so upset. It's not about fixing or taking away someone's suffering. Suffering is part of our human existence. It's more about meeting the human need for connection, that attachment need. I always talk about that. Are you there for me? Can I count on you? It's meeting that attachment need in a moment of suffering with someone you care about. Showing up and saying, I am here for you. So let's look at more of a complete definition of self compassion that involves three core elements that we bring to bear when we are in pain. I posted something yesterday about that, so if you need a review on some of those core elements, feel free to check back in with that post. So, the first element I want to talk about is self kindness. The truth is that when we make a mistake, big or small, our go to is more of the critic or enemy rather than comfort and support. We tend to beat ourselves up. Self kindness counters this tendency so that we are caring towards ourselves, so that we are as caring towards ourselves as we are towards others, that friend, that loved one. It does not mean we ignore our shortcomings, but we approach them with encouragement and support, viewing ourselves through a lens of acceptance, acknowledging the fact that we're not all good or all bad, but rather a complex person with strengths and weaknesses that can show up in different ways and in different circumstances or situations. Soothing and comforting ourselves in our pain, our time of need, as we would a friend, loved one, or even a child. The next core element is common humanity. And one of the things that can fuel this inner enemy or inner critic is this sense that we're alone or isolated in our suffering. The element of common humanity brings in the idea of interconnectedness that is central to self compassion. So, back to the scenario. If one out of every two marriages end in divorce, a return to dating after a divorce is probably not a unique situation. Yet, in that moment of rejection, people often feel alone in the pain, and the inner dialogue can fuel that, right? We think that we're the only one having to deal with this or the only one being rejected in that moment. The truth is that we are all a work in progress. As humans, we are all flawed, make mistakes, and experience suffering in life in different ways. The trap that most of us fall into is this idea or belief that things are supposed to go well, and if it doesn't, we look for the whys, the something that went wrong, or we must be the thing that went wrong, when really it's natural for things to go well and to go wrong. This element of common humanity is about noticing the pain and suffering and noticing that it's part of our shared human experience. Moving from that place of feeling alone and isolated to connected with others through this shared experience of suffering. That to divorce and start dating again, or just dating in general, suffering shows up in the form of rejection in one way or another. You rejecting someone else and feeling bad about that, or they're rejecting you. Noticing something like The pain I feel in difficult times is the same pain you feel in difficult times. The situation and degree of pain may be different, but the basic experience of human suffering is the same. The final core element is mindfulness. This involves being aware of moment to moment experiences in a clear and balanced manner, being open to the reality of the present moment, allowing thoughts, emotions, and sensations to enter our awareness without resistance or avoidance. And so, why is this an important element? We need to be able to turn toward and acknowledge when we're hurting, to be with our pain and suffering, and then to respond with care and kindness like we would that friend, loved one, or even a child. Now, this is easier said than done. Most of us are not aware of our feelings, our hurt, our suffering. Sometimes we get so caught up in problem solving mode that we don't pause to notice, label, or acknowledge our feelings, especially during hard moments. And some of that's about, wanting to have control of an outcome or to move out of that pain, right? If we move into problem solving mode, then we have something to manage. We can try to move out of it. Mindfulness counters our tendency to avoid painful thoughts and emotions. At the same time, it helps us from over identifying and becoming overwhelmed, slipping into rumination that can take us from I messed up or made a mistake to I am a failure, which is that shamed based place. And so, what we want to do is be able to dip into those emotions, reflect, which has a purposeful place that we go to, not necessarily in problem solving mode, but from a learning purpose, a learning standpoint. Mindfulness is about acknowledging without exaggerating it, taking a wise and more objective perspective of ourselves and our lives. So let's go back to that scenario again. Instead of, I will never be happy and I don't deserve to be happy, mindfulness can help us move to, I have not dated in 20 years. It hurts to be rejected, but it's part of the process. This is hard. But eventually, I'm probably going to find somebody. You can allow yourself to hurt, to see that it's okay without getting lost in self-judgment, getting overwhelmed through that over-identification or exaggeration process. So, what is the hard truth for today? Being human means we experience suffering and pain. While many think self-compassion is soft, and yes, the tender side does offer that component, but being soft and offering ourselves that kindness, it actually builds strength during difficult times so we can thrive and manage those difficult times more effectively. When we're able to sit in an emotion, to learn from it, to label it, to understand it, to allow it, we're actually in a better place to manage that distress and move forward and thrive. There is also a fierce side to compassion. Boundaries are included in this aspect. And Kristen Neff has a new book out, Fierce Self-Compassion. I encourage you both to look at her work on self-compassion, as well as Christopher Germer's that writes The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion. Those books both cover that. And then Kristen Neff's book on fierce self compassion, which I think is a beautiful piece to counter that idea that self compassion is always soft. So, the takeaway for today is to give you some tips for practice and some resources. There are two ways to practice self compassion, a formal or an informal way. The research shows that the more you do it, the better you get at it. So, here are some tips. Number one, self compassion is a practice of goodwill, not good feelings. In other words, even though the friendly, supportive stance of self compassion is aimed at the alleviation of suffering, we can't always control the way things are. If we use self compassion practice to try to make our pain go away by suppressing it or fighting against it, things will likely get worse. Self compassion is about giving ourselves the support and comfort needed to bear the pain in that moment while providing the optimal conditions for growth and transformation. Number two, some people find that when they practice self compassion, their pain actually increases at first. We call this backdraft. It's a firefighting term that describes what happens when a door to a burning house is open, the oxygen goes in, and the flames rush out. So, a similar practice can happen when you start, or a similar incident can happen when you start practicing self compassion. Love goes in, and old pain can come out. It's like opening the door to your heart. It's important to take good care of yourself in those moments where you can get more of that oxygen to your heart and the flood of flames or negative overwhelm or emotion and pain. So, in those moments, you want to take good care of yourself. And if you will dip into those books, and I'm going to also write a post later this week specifically on backdraft, then that should help you with those moments of soothing. So the saying is about backdraft. When we give ourselves unconditional love, we discover the conditions under which we were unloved. Let me say that again. And this is the oxygen, right, coming in. When we give ourselves unconditional love, opening the door, we discover the conditions under which we were unloved, hence the flames. Fortunately, we can meet old pain with the resources of mindfulness and self compassion, and the heart will naturally begin to heal. Number three, we have to allow ourselves to be slow learners when it comes to practicing self compassion. It is a process. So, what can you do when that backdraft comes up or that overwhelm? And they teach this in a lot of those free guided meditations, going back to your breath and focusing on the breath, getting grounded by focusing on the sensation of the soles of our feet on the ground, or to engage in ordinary behavioral acts of self care like having a cup of tea, or petting your pet, or going for a walk outside. And by doing so, we reinforce the habit of self compassion, giving ourselves what we need in the moment. If that moment becomes too much in a practice, then what we need in that moment is a change, a shift. When we give ourselves what we need in the moment, we are planting seeds that will eventually blossom and grow. So, like I said, there are two key books out there if you want to look up Kristen Neff, Kristen with a K, Neff, Neff, and then Christopher Germer, Germer. They both have websites that have free guided meditations of varying different lengths. And both of them have books that are available too if you want to take a deeper dive into that self compassion practice. Kristen Neff and Germer also have selfcompassion.org, and they offer some workshops and trainings if you're wanting to go even deeper. If you have trouble accessing any of that information, please do not hesitate to reach out to me by either messaging me on Facebook, reaching out to me by email, on the website, whatever you need to do to get in touch with me if you have some more questions or concerns with that. So, thank you so much for stopping in, and I will be with you guys again next month for a couple of Facebook Lives as well. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.